The Lenovo Legion 5i versus the Asus ROG Strix G. Which laptop is better for graphic design, photography, and video editing? Benchmarks coming at you right now.
Let's get rocking!
If you're new to the channel, my name is Benji Kaiser. This is where you're going to find the best tech and tools for creative professionals. So if that sounds like your kind of place, consider subscribing and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any of the future videos. Also, if you're curious about the exact pricing of either of these models as we're going through the video, you can head down into the description below and click one of those links. Now, if you do use that link, I will get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. But that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. As always, let's start off with the build quality and usability of these two laptops. Upon pulling each of them out of the box, I must say that these two laptops share similar design aesthetics. However, the Strix G has a brushed aluminum look, which is in fact not aluminum, but plastic. Both of these machines have all plastic builds, by the way. Whereas the Lenovo Legion 5i has more of a soft touch, kind of wood grain texture feel to the top of it, and has more of a minimalist design aesthetic, where that Strix G has that big Strix face going on. So definitely the Legion is more of the minimalist designer look, in my opinion. Things get very different once you open the lid of each of these laptops, activating the bright RGB glow around the rim of the Strix G, as well as the vastly different keyboard decks. The Strix G has a rigid brushed plastic keyboard deck, whereas the Legion 5i is a soft touch material. I prefer the soft touch material. It is very similar to my Dell XPS 15, and I have grown quite fond of it over the past few years. They share a similar keyboard layout, but the Strix G has an extra set of keys above the main layout, as well as the whiteout WSD keys. Both have very nice RGB backlit keys that are bright and easy to identify in the dark. As far as the key press is concerned, the Lenovo Legion 5 has a nicer key press. It is the right blend of spongy and firm. It is also important to note that if you're a designer, photographer, or video editor that uses the trackpad a lot, I'm going to steer you towards the Legion 5i. I think Lenovo has done a great job with their trackpad's sensitivity and touch gestures. The Strix G is good, but just not as good as the Legion 5i. Before I continue onto the screen, I want to point out the one thing that grinds my gears. I don't like the ledge on either of these computers. The Strix G seems to be featuring some venting within its ledge, but the Legion 5 seems to have no use case for it at all. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I would have preferred to see them go with a 16:10 screen and remove that ledge rather than having the ledge with a 16:9 aspect ratio screen. Just a quirk. Maybe they'll fix that in the future. Maybe they'll keep that forever, but I just don't like the look. It looks really bulky and chunky. Opening the lid for each of these laptops was smooth and required only one hand. Both laptops have strong hinges, and you'll notice only a slight bit of screen flex between the bottom brackets. However, I will point out the Lenovo Legion 5i has a bit of screen wobble. Not really preferred in my opinion. Both come with a 15.6-inch Full HD matte display with Lenovo reaching 315 nits of brightness per my tests, and it has a 120 Hz refresh rate, whereas the Strix G only reaches 280 nits of brightness with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. Unfortunately, both screens are not the best as far as color accuracy is concerned. The Strix G can reach a color gamut range of 38% Adobe RGB and 60% sRGB, whereas the Legion 5i can reach a color gamut range of 62% sRGB and 46% Adobe RGB. If you're a designer, photographer, or video editor though, don't let this scare you away. These are great laptops, and once we look at the benchmarks, you will see that. If you're looking for color accuracy, I always suggest complementing this laptop with an external monitor like Acer's pretty budget-friendly 100% Adobe RGB color accurate monitor, the Concept D CM2. I will link it down in the description below for you to check out. The dual screen setup will also help give you room to work on projects which can improve your workflow. The Legion 5i weighs in at 5.1 pounds, with the Strix G coming in slightly heavier at 5.28 pounds. If you are someone that often steps away from the office or a student going to class, then you are going to want to consider the Legion 5i with its 80 watt-hour battery. It will give you slightly more time on battery than the Strix G. The Legion 5i has a 5-hour web browsing battery with about 1.5 to 2 hours for design and video editing, whereas the Strix G has about 4 hours of web browsing and maybe 1 to 1.5 hours of design and video editing abilities. Now, as far as the ports are concerned, as always, I mention, make sure you get ports that are suitable for your use case. There are a lot of great port selections out there today, but if you're not going to use them, they're not useful to you. So when it comes to the ports, make sure the use case fits your needs. All right, now that we have worked through the build and usability, let's take a look at the performance. The Lenovo Legion 5i model I'm reviewing comes with the 10th gen Core i7-10750H with 6 cores and 12 threads. The NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Ti with 6 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, 8 gigs of DDR4 clocked at 2,933 Hz, and a single slot upgradable to 16 gigs, and has a 512 gig M.2 SSD. The Asus ROG Strix G that I'm reviewing comes with the Intel i7-9750H processor, the NVIDIA GTX 1660 Ti with 6 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, 16 gigs of RAM at 3200 MHz DDR4, and a 512 gig SATA SSD, plus a second SSD M.2 slot for expanded capabilities. Both laptops are well vented and receive great cool benchmarks during the 4K video editing export. The Lenovo Legion 5i stabilized temperatures at around 65 degrees Celsius, and the Strix G was also able to remain at around 65 degrees Celsius as well. This was registered during the 9-minute 4K export out of Premiere Pro at 4K YouTube settings. The Lenovo Legion 5i was able to do this 4K export in 5 minutes and 13 seconds, which was one of the fastest export times I've ever seen on my channel for that test. The ROG Strix G was able to do that same export in 6 minutes and 52 seconds, which is still very respectable. The Lenovo Legion 5i can do the 4K export to 1080p settings in 4 minutes and 40 seconds, whereas the Strix G can do that same export in 2 minutes and 26 seconds. So a little bit faster in the 1080p. It is also important to note that if you are a photographer or designer, both of these laptops are able to handle Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign easily. So if you're considering either of these laptops, you will be in good hands. If you're looking for a laptop with excellent RGB design aesthetic, great export out of Premiere Pro, with better color accuracy than the Legion 5i, then I would go with the Asus ROG Strix G. But if you're looking for a laptop with one of the fastest export times out of Premiere Pro that I have ever seen on my channel, has a great keyboard, and offers better on-the-go battery performance, then I would pick up the Legion 5i. If you're curious about the exact pricing of either of these models, you can head down into the description below and click one of those links. Again, if you do use that link, I will get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. And that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. Keep editing, keep designing, keep creating. I'm Benji Kaiser, and I will see you here in the next video.